Welcome to the Evolve WMMA podcast featuring women who go against conventional thinking to pursue their dreams. They are warriors who've gained respect by taking the reins and moving forward, creating progressive change in a male-dominated arena. These women have inspiring stories to tell, filled with real-life joy, passion, blood, sweat, and tears. Hey, 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 this is Evolve Women's MMA, and I'm your host, Shelly Devine. Hey, so this week's guest is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt and an accomplished striker. She began her martial arts career very early on at the age of 7 years old under the tutelage of Guy Mezger, who is a former UFC fighter and I think champ. She had her first boxing match at 16, her first kickboxing match at 17, and she has an amateur record of 3-0. And for her professional debut, she won her bout against, I think it was Roxanne Cesar. And she more recently had her Invicta FC debut as a featherweight fighter. And actually, it came to a draw, but it came to a draw because she lost a point. So due to a headbutt. So I'm kind of wondering what she was thinking about doing that headbutt. I want to get to the bottom of that. I'd like to welcome Audrey Wolfe.
Doing all right. How are you?
You feeling a little better there?
Oh, getting there.
Oh, wow. Do you have like the flu or something?
I think just like a sinus infection.
Oh, no. Really? Do you think it's just from the letdown of the fight recently? Do you kind of think it's just kind of, the stress of a fight and getting punched or whatever?
Maybe.
Wow.
I usually get sick after fights, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes if I can remember back in the day, they would say to me when I was doing my fight training, like if you got choked a little bit or something, you would get a cold afterwards or a sore throat. And I felt like whenever somebody had like a really good choke on me, I would get like some sort of like cold or sore throat so I don't know. Maybe it's just a little bit of that. It was pretty intense, your fight.
It was.
It was quite excellent.
It's not the outcome I hoped for, but thanks.
Yeah. So inquiring minds want to know, what were you thinking with the headbutt at that time, at that moment, in that moment?
I think I wasn't thinking. I mean, she was controlling my posture. I wanted my head free. I think it was reaction and instinctual. It wasn't.
Yeah.
There was no thought behind it.
Yeah. It was an awesome move. We were like, wow. I remember when I was watching, I was like, damn. I'm like, she actually just freaking headbutted the girl. And we haven't seen that. I've watched, the MMA for a long time, so you used to kind of see stuff like that back in the day. You don't see it so much now. And I didn't really actually know that it was against the rules, until they of course pointed it out, and it makes sense that it would be against the rules nowadays. But yeah, it was pretty you're memorable for that one. You're going to be very memorable for that one.
Okay.
Dangerous woman.
I'd rather remember for something else, but
So I'd like to welcome to the show Audrey Wolfe. So awesome to have you here. I mean, I know it wasn't, your Invicta debut wasn't the way you wanted it to go, but it was an awesome fight. And, you did lose a point during the match for that headbutt, but you put on a great show.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, what's next for you? Have they given any inclination for another fight for you in the recent?
They haven't. I hope to stay active. I mean, they did offer me a 4-fight contract. They said they usually don't put people on back-to-back shows, so I don't think I'm going to get to be on the November one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an exclusive deal, so I can fight for other organizations. So I'm hoping to get back out there as quickly as I can.
Nice. And I noticed your coach, who is Guy Mezger. Are you guys related or something?
No.
Oh, okay.
Um,
You just went to his gym. Your mom actually got you into his gym and you've been training with him for a long time, like 23 years or something, right?
yeah, 27, I think. Yeah,
Wow.
it's been a
Wow.
minute. It's been a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's coached you, I mean, through all of your previous fights, your boxing, your kickboxing fights. Has he been your coach all these years?
I mean, certainly one of them. So I started with him when I was 7. Started competing in karate and like karate tournaments. Then
Hmm.
I did my first boxing fight when I was 16. First kickboxing fight at 17. He certainly coached me for the kickboxing. For the boxing, we've usually had another coach that I've worked with. David Douglas is the other one that was in my corner, and he's more of my boxing coach, I would say. And then
Hmm.
we've got a jiu-jitsu coach that I train with as well. So, but yeah, guys, I've been with Guy, most of my life, and he's certainly been, the one that has directed me to do these things and has coached me a lot.
Has he been an influence in your, like, I mean, I know as a coach, but how has he influenced you? Like, I know you work at his gym,
Hmm.
but has he influenced that too, or is it something that you just innately, once you decided you want to do, martial arts, that you're like, I want this as a career path? Or how did he influence you to become kind of, a manager in his gym, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started in the martial arts program, and I mean, to be able to test for your black belt under him, you have to have a certain amount of hours teaching. And so I started teaching, when I was really a kid myself, and enjoyed it. And moved away when I was in college for a little bit, but then ended up coming back to the Dallas area to finish up school, and was working for him
Mhm.
while I was in school. And when I was getting ready to graduate, he was like, "You're not going to leave me when you graduate, are you?" And I was like, "Get me health insurance and I won't." And so that's
Nice.
really when I started working for him full time. So I went and got a biology degree that I don't use at all. um, and I teach for him, I manage for him, run the gym. I'm up there full time, work up there 7 days a week. So, I mean, Guy's an incredible person. He's an incredible instructor. He's an incredible man, and he certainly has motivated me to want to be, involved in martial arts, to want to give back to the community, to want to teach, and and pass on what I can. And yeah, I work alongside him every day.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you have like a former, UFC. He's a champion, I think. Did he had the belt at some point, I think. and and to have that in your corner, going into your MMA career, that must have been kind of, wow, I got a solid foundation here, especially with all your years of training. I mean, you tried out for the Olympics. You have a boxing background, and you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. I mean, that's serious business. Most of the women that are now competing don't have the longevity. This is something I'm noticing now. They don't have the longevity in their martial arts training that you have. And I wouldn't mind, if you went into it a little bit more of, what it was like growing up and training, the desire that you had to actually start training. How did you direct? Like, what was the real interest when you first got involved in martial arts? Was it boxing? Was it ground stuff? Or was it, kickboxing, or karate? Oh.
I actually, so I have an older sister, and then my older cousin actually lived with my parents. And so when I was young, my older cousin, she came back in from college, and she took my sister and I to lunch, and she was like, Jessica's my sister. Jessica, what are you doing? And my sister was like, oh, I'm doing, horseback riding and swimming and tennis. And she was like, Audrey, what are you doing? I was like, well, I want to do karate, but mom won't let me, so I'm not doing anything. And so Lisa actually went and guilted my mom and was like, Jessica gets to do everything, and Audrey doesn't get to do anything, and you have to let Audrey do karate. And my mom, certainly, I don't think I don't know, didn't think her little girl should be doing karate, first of all. And then second of all, didn't think I would stick with it like I did, I'll say
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So I started in martial arts, yeah, when I was 7. And then I did a lot of karate tournaments. So I have a black belt under Guy in Chen Duquan, which is Most of the people that we trained under went into kickboxing, did a lot of kickboxing, mainly like the full contact rules kickboxing, so it's like above the waist. And then, I was at his gym full time, and we had, by that time he had started incorporating, other disciplines, getting other instructors in there. And so we were going to do a team for Golden Gloves, which is, the boxing tournament.
Boxing, yep.
And so that was coming around, and I'd gotten my black belt from him, and he was like, you should really do the Golden Gloves team this year, work on your boxing. I was like, okay, sure. And so I did Golden Gloves the first time. I think I was a junior in high school, and my mom, again, Golden Gloves in Dallas, it was at Fair Park, which is not necessarily the nicest part of town, and my parents had me at a really nice college prep school. A lot of money on it. So it was time to go to Golden Gloves, and we go to Fair Park, and we walk in, and there's like this huge sign up above, and it says Dallas Golden Gloves, sponsored by Cowboy Bail Bondsman. My mom was like, oh my God, do you think you belong with these people? I was like, Mom, it's fine.
She must have been flipping out.
Yeah. Whereas, my dad, the joke of my family was always that I was the son my dad never had. My dad was a Navy SEAL. He was a Vietnam vet. He's, he really enjoyed everything that I did. And so he was cheering me on. He's like, oh, Mimi, calm down. It's okay. It's okay. He was trying to wrangle my mom in, but was certainly more supportive of what I was doing. And yeah, I then ended up doing kickboxing. When I was in college, I didn't really train as much, honestly. And then when they announced that they were adding women's boxing to the Olympics, by that time I had graduated. And when I was in college, I would do like Golden Gloves once a year. But then they said they were adding women's boxing to the Olympics, and I'd always, been pretty successful at boxing. I really liked it. And so that's what I started focusing the most on, I would say, and, traveling all over to compete, to get those fights. And yeah, I don't know. I would say I've certainly, I've always enjoyed it. So it's not, it's kind of, yes, it's how I grew up, and it's but at the same time, it's, people say like, how can you stay training that long? How can you? Well, because I like it, because I want to do it. It's not something that I felt I had to do. It's just something that I truly enjoyed doing.
So how do you feel like, when you were at that age, like 7 years old, and you're bugging your mom, I want to try karate, or I want to try some sort of martial arts training, did you see something on TV? Like, for boys, it was like they saw, Bruce Lee, like in certain movies. Was there something that you saw on TV that inspired you, or?
I have no idea. So my mom actually, she finally caved, and she took me to wherever. And I was actually like 3 or 4 when I first started. And then my dad had an oil and gas company, and his partner died, so he ended up moving to Marshall, Texas. And when she told me when we got to Marshall that there was no karate in Marshall, and so I couldn't keep taking karate. And then when we moved back, my godmother had actually started training with Guy Mesger, and she had gotten, her kids were training, and she got a bunch of the moms to do like a self-defense class. And so she got my mom to go in and do the self-defense class, and I was up there one day, and I was like, oh my gosh, well, I want to take karate with Guy now. And my mom's like, we already tried karate. We're done with that. I'm like, no, I want to do it with Guy. And Guy always jokes that my mom was like the first person to fail his self-defense class. My mom has like, there's not a competitive bone in her body, so she would be in the and Guy had the long ponytail at the time, and so like Guy would be like, okay, if someone does this, you're gonna pull my hair, and she's like, but I don't want to pull your hair. And he's like, okay, you're gonna put your fingers in their eye, and she's like, you're gonna blind them. And my mom was like, permanently? Like, Mimi, they're trying to rape you. You don't care. She's like, I do care. So I certainly didn't get that from my mom, but
I guess you got all your dad's kind of like, his, if he was a Navy SEAL, you got kind of his characteristics, like those cookie cutter archetypal characteristics of the fighter and warrior and that sort of stuff. Wow. It just seems
Absolutely.
so interesting to me as a young child that you kind of innately knew that you wanted to go down that road of martial arts,
Yeah, I have no idea really.
It's very cool.
I'm thankful that my mom did end up, training with Guy, and that I did end up at a good place that, gave me the opportunity to really expand what I was doing and to train in all the different disciplines.
Yeah, it's really cool that to recognize that in a young girl. I mean, we're typically, and you were very adamant about what you wanted to do. So that's kind of, where you were persistent and asking your parents, I want to do this. And when your dad supported you. So that's really cool. But for, other people that are out there, at least nowadays, there's women that are in the martial arts, so you see it. But back, probably when you were coming up, you didn't see this sport opening that you could actually have a career in it. You don't see the whole path of where it could take women. It was only maybe for guys or boxers or something. It really, has opened up a lot in the last 20 years. But it's fascinating to me to see a young woman, well, a girl, and has progressed into it as a woman, and there's a career path now for you. I mean, you're in it. What did you go to college for?
Biology.
Biology. Interesting. Why biology? Just out of curiosity.
I wanted to go to PT school. I wanted to go to physical therapy school. So I started off with a kinesiology major,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a lot more in line with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But then to be able to apply to PT school, I'd have to have so many hours of biology and chemistry that I ended up changing my major to biology and my minor to chemistry. Um,
Which makes sense for what you do as a profession right now too, in line with that for future stuff too. If you're working with fighters later on in your life, or even your own challenges with fighting and whatever recovery you have to do, during the times of training and the hardcoreness of it, and actually understanding what your body needs to recover. So that's really cool. Wow. Very accomplished woman.
well, thank you.
Yeah. I know when I read your intake, like I was like, oh wow, this is really kind of cool that you have an entrepreneurial side of you too. You are interested in business
Yeah.
and having your own business in a male dominated kind of arena, meaning in martial arts. Are you looking to do something like that, or?
I mean, really, I run Guy's Gym, so I do everything there. I teach the classes, I manage the gym. But yeah, I mean, probably partnering with him and opening other locations under that umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Is this still under Ken Shamrock's, or is it just it's strictly guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow.
Ken came in and trained with us for his last fight that didn't go so well, but I mean, he and Guy are still good friends. But yeah, it's just guys under Guy's name.
Yeah, very neat. Um, so you made a statement in the intake form. You mentioned martial arts is for everyone, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you too, and even for your mom, even though.
Hard over the years. I don't know. It might be for everyone but my mom. But I mean, I truly think the world would be a better place if everyone trained in some kind of martial arts. And I think I've seen it's helped me so much of my life, and I know I've seen it help so many people in their lives. And I mean, my favorite thing that I do is to teach, and I have clients that are, little girls and little boys. Of course, the girls, have a soft spot for me, but, I have clients that are 5 years old. I have a woman who's, in her later 60s that comes in and trains with me,
Mhm.
who has arthritis, who's, absolutely limited in what she's able to do, but still comes in and, boxes. Um, and I think it's empowering. And I think that, there's so many benefits that people, I wish people would look into it. I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah, but there probably wouldn't be as much war and conflict in other countries or other parts of the places of the world, because I think you get to an appreciation. My own thinking is, I've gotten to a point where I wouldn't want to fight. You know, I know how to defend myself. I know how to be offensive, but if push came to shove, if I had an encounter, say out on the street or whatever, I have confidence in a way that I didn't have prior to martial arts
Absolutely.
and or my martial arts training. So it definitely builds a strong sense of character in ways that, say, even like say yoga, which has a spiritual connotation, does not, because you get to interact with people. You're interacting physically with an opponent or another person with martial arts types of training. So I think it's pretty cool.
Well, and I think it's hard to be mad at the end of the day if you get to go and beat a bag or throw someone around or choke someone out. Like it's hard to hold on to too much anger after that.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things you did mention too was about managing your emotions. You're really kind of you kind of have that down where you don't get mad. And I think that's a real key factor in martial arts training, because most people react out of, you know, an impulse, an emotional impulse, instead of really kind of controlling their reactions to things or their emotions.
I mean, and I think you have to be able to fight in martial arts. You can't, people are going to talk a lot of trash, and you can't let that, get in your mind. People are going to, people ask all the time, like, how do you go in there and hit someone in the face? Like, do you hate them? Are you mad at them? And, no, I'm not mad. I'm not angry. I appreciate the sport of it. I appreciate the what getting to put into motion the things that I've trained to do. And you can't, if you don't have a calm, rational mind about you, you can't exactly, use the tools that you've been trained to do.
Yeah. What did you say to Holly Salazar after the headbutt, like towards the end of I guess after the fight was done and you guys got the draw and everything? I thought you went over and said something to her. What did you say?
I mean, I said, I'm so sorry, and it wasn't intentional. And I, hope you know that I, wasn't trying to, I mean, I wasn't trying to do something illegal, and I wasn't trying, I hold myself to a higher standard than that, and I apologized.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I knew when watching it was an instinctual thing, but I just wanted to hear, like, what did you feel like? What was going on there? Like, what happened? Like, where you just kind of, it's a survival kind of thing. I was like, wow. And then it just shows a side of you too. Did you find that wow, I got this side of myself that I will go out like I'll do anything to kind of, did it like a survival thing come in? Did you feel like, or that impulse? You don't even know. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, to me,
I know I won't make the mistake again.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great fight. But anyways, we'll move on. So you tried out for Tough 28 for and I know some of the other women that I've interviewed had mentioned, you had tried out. They said they really liked you. They thought you were great. You looked really good in the tryouts. But there you got a chance to meet Caitlin Young.
Yeah.
And that actually interaction probably got you into Invicta, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. How did that go, like with Caitlin?
So my last name was Drew. I just got married in April, and I was in a Guy Mesger rash guard that said Drew on the back, and Caitlin came up to me and she was like, "Does your first name happen to be Audrey?" And I was like, "Yes." Who are you? And she was like, "Oh," she was like, "No, I've been watching you for a while." She was like, "I'm the matchmaker for Invicta, and I've been thinking about signing you." And she was like, "I've been watching your fights." I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome." Well, so I introduced myself. So it's so nice to meet her. She was trying out for the Ultimate Fighter too.
Yeah.
And so then she reached out to me after the tryouts, and yeah, I ended up signing with Invicta. So
Very cool. So you're just kind of on this little path right now of we'll see where it goes. And it looks like they've kind of developed they're starting to develop the featherweight division in Invicta more so instead of, I'd say, the UFC, because I mean, they kind of tough. They signed a lot of bantamweights, which I mean, we've been rehashing for a lot, on this particular podcast, because we really want to see a featherweight division grow. And I'm sure you have your sights on, getting the title. Who do you see as your biggest competition now, if you're looking at the featherweight division and looking at the fighters in that division? Who do you think is going to be your biggest competition in that division to get to the title?
well, I mean, so they announced that they have Felicia Spencer and Pam Sorensen fighting for the title. I think Pam will win that handedly.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Pam a lot. I got to meet her at the Ultimate Fighter trials. She's
Mm-hmm.
certainly something I've watched in Invicta. I've been a fan of Invicta for a long time. I think she is probably the most dominant one in that division right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think the cool thing too is I know Invicta signed some of the other girls that were at the tough tryouts. So they signed Zara, who I think is going to be an awesome addition.
Yeah.
So at least someone was paying attention to some of the tough and awesome featherweights that were out there. It wasn't UFC, but
Well, I think it was Caitlin.
yeah, absolutely.
I think she definitely was, because she knew. Like, she's like, let's get this going, and she'll be part of that, because I think she's fighting Zara. I think sometime soon. On some card, I thought they had a matchup.
I thought she was gonna fight at bantamweight, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I might have misquoted. I don't know. I'm like, I thought she was fighting Zara, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyways, yeah. So that is very exciting news, I think, on the featherweight division. Do you find that that's your best way to compete at?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm 5'9". Like my first professional fight I did at 135, and that was a really miserable experience.
Yeah, I bet.
And when I was fighting amateur, I mean, mainly because I felt like most of the opportunities were at 135 at the bantamweight division. I did one fight at 145, and then my other fights I did catch weights at 140. Just trying to see if I could get down. And then I did the one fight at 135, and I'm bigger than most of the girls that are fighting at bantamweight. Like, I don't think any of them are as tall as I am, and I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's a tough weight cut for somebody that tall. I remember Peggy Morgan, and people will be looking at her. How do you cut down to that? And I mean, I've trained with Peggy a couple of years ago, whatever, and she's like a big, tall woman. And to cut down to, what was it, 135? I was like, how do you do that? Even, Dana White asked her, how the hell do you do? But he used an F-bomb. How do you do that? So I can't even imagine like being asked actually to do that. But I know women early on were doing it to have the fights. I mean, now there's more opportunity, thank goodness, because of Invicta, and Bellator actually is the UFC, and there's others that are out there too, maybe not as well known, but that are giving women the opportunity, which is awesome. So could you share a personal habit or a daily routine that contributes to your success as a fighter?
I mean, I think, to me, the one thing that has helped me the most is just taking some time to myself every day. It's a silly thing, but I mean, certainly important to me, in that working at the gym it's chaotic, and there's people pulling you in every different direction at any moment. And then I'm married. We've got full custody of my stepdaughter, and we have 3 dogs. We have, a lot going on here too. And so to just be able to have a little bit of quiet time to myself every day to, reflect, to plan, is, I think, important.
Mhm. So when you reflect in your quiet time, is that more of like a meditative or just, taking a nap and sitting under a tree and just kind of visualization and dreaming, or what is it like for you?
I certainly do a lot of visualization, but just going through, and I do some journaling too, but just going over what has been working, what has not been working, what my goals are for the future that I want to change,
Hmm.
um, and just decompressing a little bit. Especially like at the
Hmm.
gym, I teach a lot of the kids classes, which is fun, and I really enjoy teaching the kids. But you have to be really on.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's a lot of energy and it's a lot of um,
Yeah.
going uh, so to
Yeah, I
have
can imagine.
some some quiet time.
Yeah, I bet. And just chill. And do you have like a favorite TV show that will help you chill out? Like something that you like to watch or something like that, that kind of just
I really
helps you
don't watch that
unwind?
much TV.
You don't watch TV. Wow. See there. There's a little thing that we didn't know. That's cool. You're so busy. That's why you don't have time.
I do like Grey's Anatomy. That's the one show that I've actually seen every episode of. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I don't watch much TV. I don't have time for it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You have a busy life. If you have 3 dogs, who walks them?
3 dogs and then we foster dogs too. So like right now I only have 3, but I've had up to 10 before.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I'm a crazy dog lady.
You're a crazy dog lady. Wow. All kinds of different breeds, I'm, assuming. So, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
did you have dogs growing up as a kid?
We did. We always had one dog growing up. I don't. My parents weren't quite as crazy as I am. We always had a lab growing up, and then I had one dog for about 10 years, and he was my bud, and it was just the two of us. I lived alone with him for a long time, and after I lost him, it was terrible. But then I ended up getting my next dog through a rescue group that a friend of mine from high school started.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, she would post things on Facebook that they were looking for fosters. And I'm like, oh, we should foster dogs. And
Wow.
then I ended up liking some of the fosters. So, we call it foster fail. Now I have 3 permanent dogs, and then we usually foster one at a time. But one time I accidentally pulled a pregnant Chiweenie from a shelter, and then she multiplied, and yeah.
You have puppies?
I did. I had 7. I kept one of them.
Wow.
And, I was bothering him earlier because so one of them I couldn't quite get rid of, and he's now my permanent.
Oh, look at him. Oh my goodness, so cute. What's his name?
This is Doze.
Doze.
Yes.
Wow. What a pretty puppy.
Mm-hmm. And then we have like 2 enormous pit bulls.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Wow. And they're so relaxed.
And
That's
they're like
awesome.
best friends. These are gonna go snuggle together.
So you got a pack.
Yes, I don't know. I've got my mother Star. She's probably outside. But yeah.
Nice. It seems like a lot of martial artists have dogs. A lot of most of the people that I've interviewed, they seem to have dogs or some sort of pets, and like not just more than one, several.
Dogs are
it's a pattern.
Dogs are the best.
They are. I had a few years ago when my kids were growing up, on and off, but right now I do not have any animals, and at some point I probably will get another pet, but right now I'm too in and out all the time that I don't know. It'll happen maybe later on down the road. But I love seeing other people's pets. I'd probably be better at babysitting. I should probably start out the way you did. Take a foster.
Yeah, fostering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea.
Then you end up a crazy dog lady with 3 of them.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, oh no. Well, I recently saved a baby squirrel on the side of the sidewalk. It was a little teeny, like about this big, and I didn't know if it was a kitten or a rat or a squirrel. And I didn't think of it was a squirrel, but when I was looking for an animal rehabber, they're like, put a dime beside it. And they're like, oh, it's a squirrel. And I'm like, how can they tell? But he's still doing just fine. Found him in, I think it was in July, and he's still surviving. This woman down in Boston is taking care of him, but he's like this little guy. I'm like, oh my God, he's making it. He had no fur on him or anything. And I'm like, just a weird coincidence, like kind of thing. I was like, he's on the sidewalk going, help me, help me. And I'm like, what do I do with this thing? What is it? But that's my most recent animal story. So what would you tell us a story of a time on your journey as a martial artist where you had an aha moment of realization?
I mean, I think it's hard to say. It's hard to say, but I think honestly for me, my aha moment has been getting to put all the martial arts together and getting to train in MMA. I've, because I did start in karate, and then I did the boxing for a long time, and then I did jiu-jitsu for a long time. And to finally get to be competing in something where I get to put all of the different things together, it's been really a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, how did it feel the first time when you got into competing, like as a mixed martial artist in MMA? What was your amateur kind of like the first time you got in the cage? What did that feel like to you to actually be able to use everything?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, honestly, like because I started off in kickboxing and karate basically, and then I did boxing for so long. And like when I was boxing, it was like, especially when I first started, it was like all I could think is like, don't kick, don't kick, don't kick, don't kick, put your feet on the ground. I never actually kicked anyone. I did raise my leg up at someone. Um, and then like in jiu-jitsu, I like, then it's like, don't hit someone, don't hit someone.
Mm-hmm.
So to actually get to put everything together, it was really exciting. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it for sure.
That's cool. What are 3 goals for the next 3 years that you might have, either personal or business?
I want to fight and win the Invicta title.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Invicta has truly shown that they are bringing in the best, featherweight women. I think that is the top organization right now.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Cyborg's awesome, but I think she's leaving UFC, so it'll be interesting to see what she does. And then I want to continue to grow our gym, and I don't know. I guess keep my happy home.
Yeah. How about a story of a time on your journey where you experienced failure, and what did you learn from it?
I've failed a lot in martial arts, and I think it's important that people know that. I mean, I know, so like right now I'm undefeated in MMA. I've got the draw, which felt like a loss, but and a lot of people, especially my students, are used to seeing me win because I have won a lot of things. I've won a lot of national and international titles in different sports, but I've also lost and I failed. I tried to qualify for the Olympics in boxing and I failed. And I fought for the U.S. title in kickboxing, and I failed. I've competed at the Worlds in Jiu-Jitsu, and I failed. And any one of those moments, I could have quit. It could have been like, this is what I've been training for, and I didn't get it, and so I could have quit. But instead, I think I, refocused my energy onto something else, and letting those actually all come together. That's what's allowed me to be successful in MMA. And so I think it's important for people to know that when you do fail, when you do lose, you get to decide, is that the end or do you want to keep going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how important is it having resilience and courage, to stay in the fight game?
Well, you have to. I mean, if you beat yourself up over every loss, then there's only so far you can go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the greatest do fail. Because they take on the hardest challenges. And so if you're going to challenge yourself, you're not always going to come out on top. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's, from that point, how do you react to it?
Mm. Yeah, exactly. Um, what has been your greatest challenge with when dealing with, say, fear, and how have you overcome it?
I would say honestly, training at Guy's Gym as long as I have, I've been exposed to jujitsu for a long time, but I hated it. I would try a class here and there, and it's like I don't understand why anyone would do this sport. There's a sweaty man on top of you, like
Yeah.
holding you down. It's miserable. Um, and I seriously, I would try one class and then I would not do it again for a year.
Mhm.
And when I was boxing and I lost, I was trying to qualify for the Olympics and I lost at the last Olympic qualifier. I was absolutely devastated. I mean, I've been training 4 or 6 hours a day. Everything I've been doing is boxing, and paying for myself to travel and compete at these tournaments. And I came up short, and it was heartbreaking and gut wrenching. And I decided to make myself start doing jujitsu after that. So the next week I went and I did jujitsu, and I started doing jujitsu like twice a day, every day,
Mhm.
because I hated it, because it was miserable to me. And um, a
Mm.
lot of people are like, why would you do something you hate? Well,
Yeah.
because I thought it would make me stronger as a person. I thought it would make me stronger as a martial artist, to go in and do something that made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then so after like 6 weeks of training, I did my first jiu-jitsu tournament, which, most people train, I'd say, a lot longer than that before competing.
Yeah.
Um, and granted, I was athletic and I was going in. It's not like I went in not knowing, I knew what mount position was. I knew what guard position was. I knew what the basic positions were because I'd been exposed to it, but I hadn't really trained it. And
Mhm.
then I went in and, did really well in the jiu-jitsu tournament, and I won like all the divisions I did. Um, and it was, you know, taking what had been a weakness for me and what had been something that truly frightened me. And then, now I've been able to use it as actually something that's a strength of mine.
Mhm.
And it really helped me, I think, get over the fear of competing again. Because when you work so hard for something, and you lose and you come up short, like I did with boxing, it's, you kind of lose the desire to compete. You lose
Mhm.
it makes it harder for you. And what jujitsu gave me the opportunity to where it's, I didn't have the high expectations. I would say, it's like I would go in thinking like I'm not supposed to be good at this. Like I'm supposed to be good at the stand up. So what does it really matter if I lose in
Right.
this? Because I
Right.
didn't go and put as much pressure on myself.
Mhm.
Um, and ended up, really, I've had a lot of fun with jujitsu and I've done really well. I've won a lot of really cool titles, and
Mhm.
um, I've continued with it and enjoyed it.
Mm. When you're speaking about, your losses, these important ones that you were shooting for a specific goal, and when you see, like, say, other, like, I'm just going to, throw out, Ronda Rousey, when she was kind of dismantled by Holly Holm, and then she didn't appear in she wouldn't talk about it or anything like that. And can you identify with her, like, kind of stepping, because what you're describing to me sounds like what maybe we observed as fans from her. Can you identify with that, of her kind of taking a step back and not didn't want to be around anybody, and that feeling where it kind of it's your heart that's affected, but is it soulful, would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I lost in boxing after, for literally for 2 years, I've trained 6 hours a day. All I was doing was boxing. All I was, spending so much of my own money, to travel, to be able to compete in these tournaments, and winning a lot of things and doing really well. But like, when it all, like at the culmination, at the end of it, I lost.
Mm,
And it's like when everything in your life has been focused on this one goal for literally years,
mm,
and then you lose that. It's, it makes you question who you are. It makes you, and I can understand, I understand why she didn't want to talk to people. I understand why, she didn't want to do interviews and why she wanted to, withdraw. But at the same time, it's, and I think she kind of took it and channeled it into, okay, now she wants to be married. She wants to have that life. She wants to live a different life, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
She gets to make those choices. And ultimately, she's fought at the highest level. Like, she's achieved
Yeah.
a lot, I think really arguably more than anyone else has in MMA. So if it's time for her to step back, it's time for her to step back.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I would never be able to go out on a note like that. For me, I think I've used a lot of the losses that I've had to, come back stronger, to come back in a different way, to reinvent myself and to come back. And maybe that's what she's doing with wrestling. I don't really pay too much attention to WWE, but
Yeah.
I guess now she gets, that outlet, which is, I'm sure she's making a lot more money. She's not really risking actually getting injured. So
yeah. For me, it makes sense for that she went that route. It seemed to be like she talked about it even prior to her MMA career. I mean, she talked about it. She used to watch it. She, like she was a fan. And now she got a chance to play in it, and she seems more like the entertainer. But as you know, as you evolve in your fight career and discovering these aspects of yourself where you had this shift, you kind of this goal that you had to get into the Olympics, and then it kind of, the pendulum swung and you got into something that you hated, like you didn't want to do. And do you love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, or would you say you do?
I do.
Yeah, because you're a brown belt now, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I mean, it's so funny. For the longest time, I avoided it. And I truly, I hated it. I hated everything about it. And now I really enjoy it. It's been, I think a big part of my game in MMA, which is funny because, ultimately, like, I still think of myself as a striker more than I do as a ground player. But, like, I won the Nogi Pan Ams in Jiu-Jitsu. Like, I won the Abu Dhabi trials. I got to go compete in Abu Dhabi. Like, I've won some really cool stuff in Jiu-Jitsu, and have had some awesome experiences from it.
Wow.
And I will say, like, Jiu-Jitsu, I think especially it gives women and the smaller opponents so many more opportunities to be advantageous against the larger opponent. Like, I mean, in boxing, I could hold my own with men, a lot bigger than me. I think kickboxing even, but not many women, I would say, would have those opportunities. Whereas in Jiu-Jitsu, there's a lot more opportunities like that. And no, I enjoy it a lot. I have a lot of fun with it now.
Wow, that's fascinating. Would you say it developed your character as a fighter or as a human being differently than, say, maybe some of the other martial arts types of training that you've done?
I think Jiu-Jitsu is more humbling than any other martial art.
Yeah.
Just in that, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Getting hit in the face is certainly humbling, but in Jiu-Jitsu, like, you're going to lose every day. Like, like when you're training in boxing, like, you're not going to spar every day. If you spar every day in boxing, you're going to end up hurt, like, so some days you're going to be hitting mitts, some days you're going to be hitting bags, some days you're going to be doing footwork drills, and, like, there's days that, like, so you're going to feel really, oh, you just went and hit mitts and, like, you feel really good about it. Or, you might spar, but, like, you're working more on, like, specific things, and you're always going to get hit some in boxing, but it's not like when you're training, you're getting knocked out or anything. I mean, because you shouldn't be sparring at that level. Whereas in Jiu-Jitsu, like, you're going to roll every day that you train, and you're going to get submitted every day that you roll.
Yeah.
And so you're going to lose. 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 And, and I think and not everyone can handle that with Jiu-Jitsu. I think that's why you see not as many people stick with it, because it's hard on, I think, people's egos. But knowing, getting used to that losing, getting used to that, I mean, kind of figuring out that puzzle of like how to not lose as much, I think it does build different things in you for sure.
Yeah, those are great points. I hadn't heard it said so well. You know, the whole losing thing every day. It's really,
I mean, if you're
yeah,
when you're rolling, if you're not getting submitted when you're rolling, then you're not
yeah,
rolling with people that are good, and uh, and you're not taking chances. I mean, I will say, like when I in jiu-jitsu, I think it also gives you the opportunity to like put yourself in, in boxing, you're not necessarily gonna like let someone hit you so that you can be in a bad like, you've got to do your best to protect your head in boxing or in
mhm,
kickboxing. But like in jiu-jitsu, like if I'm going with someone that I know I'm better than or I know I'm stronger than, like, then I'm gonna let them take my back, let them put me in an arm bar, let them put me in a bad position so that I can try to fight out of that position. Otherwise, I'm not gonna get anything from rolling with them.
mm,
So it just it is. It certainly builds different things.
yeah, wow. Who would you say has played a meaningful role in your life's journey and influenced you in a positive way?
I'd have to say my father would be the biggest influence. My dad was he was a Navy SEAL. He played football at SMU.
Yeah,
And then
wow.
his senior year, he actually tore his knee up, and so he couldn't play football anymore. And so then he became a cheerleader so that he could travel with the football team his senior year. And then he went and traveled through Europe, and when he came back, he was served with a draft card, and he decided if he was, could possibly be drafted, he'd rather enlist and do it the way he wanted to. And so they had just started up with the Navy SEALs then, and he was in the second ever SEAL class, and he graduated number one in his class. And then he went. He thought by graduating number one, he'd get to like pick his assignment, and he ended up being a lieutenant commander in Vietnam. Um,
So,
and
so what is it about like his background as a military soldier and like what did he give you? Like what did you pick up from him? Like, the grit, the toughness, for a girl, like a young girl coming up and seeing her dad and then picking that up and doing actually the things that you do. I just find this really fascinating because typically women aren't nurtured in this way, and they are more so with, say, your generation coming up. It wasn't so much even though when I was coming up we had some of these patterns in us as females, but they weren't nurtured and they weren't uh, supported, I guess, maybe a little bit in the family, but definitely not outside the family. So I'm curious to hear what you felt as a young girl growing up that you did get from your dad.
I mean, my dad taught me so much about perseverance, about grit, about my dad was the one that picked me up from school and took me to karate every day.
Hmm.
Um, he made that a priority. He was the one that cheered me on at every karate tournament that I did. Like, that's something that he certainly got a lot of joy in watching me do. And my sister is a swimmer. I mean, I think athletics in general was certainly more like his department than my mom's.
Hmm.
Even, what I've told you about my mom, she's not the most
Yeah.
athletic one. But, so that was certainly like the things that he, wanted to be there for and was always present for. Um, and yeah, I mean, I, I mean, it's funny. I mean, he was always like in karate tournaments when I first started competing in karate tournaments. Like they don't until 13, I think. Like you're in co-ed divisions, so I like fought a lot of boys in karate tournaments, and so I beat a lot of boys in karate tournaments. And like my dad always loved that. Like that was something that like he'd get so excited for. Like you know, um, and he enjoyed a lot. I don't know.
That's really cool. That's cool. That's cool to have that support from your dad. I think a lot of women seek that. Of course, they have their mom's support. I think most girls have their moms, but they're when they're out in the world, they're looking for that masculine kind of backbone when you're out there, and having a parent, a dad to do that, I think is significant in the development of a woman being confident and successful. And I guess the reason why I'm asking these questions is so when people are listening, and actually other moms or other men that are listening, and if they have daughters, that they're going to be like, oh, well, this is what's going to make my daughter successful, because this is what this woman, and look at her career, and these things do factor into your success. As my opinion is, this is my opinion, to your success. And having that structure, or that parental support on both sides, the male and the female aspect of it. And I really think that adds to your success as a fighter now, and in your career path, and being supported in something that's completely unconventional for women. I mean, it still is, even though there's a lot more opportunity for women to do this sort of career path as a fighter, and as a mixed martial artist, and as a teacher and instructor in a gym. I didn't even get into that with you, what challenges, although I suspect because you're under Guy Mesner, he had a lot of faith in you to teach, but you must have at some point been questioned on, somebody coming into the gym and, is she actually good enough to teach me? Or, you must have had some of that.
Daily.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody I haven't interviewed as a woman that hasn't experienced that sort of thing, where you have to kind of prove yourself. I think guys get that too. They'll get that too, but not as much as a woman will, especially in what you're doing. How do you see yourself as a role model for girls or young women coming up?
I mean, I think it's important for women to be aware that they are role models, and that there are people watching, and they need to be aware of, how they conduct themselves. I think that's one thing that bothered me about Rhonda when she, disappeared after her loss, is that, there's so many people that are watching you. And you have to be cognizant of that, and you have to be aware of that. And I think, because I have been teaching, and especially teaching kids for so long, it's something that I'm, I maybe more used to than that. But it's, it's making sure you are setting the right example, and it's making sure that, and I know that what we are doing now is opening the door for even more women in the future.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Hopefully these girls, I didn't get to grow up watching any women fight on TV. I didn't get to grow up, really seeing any women in martial arts, even as long as I've been in martial arts. And so I'm glad that the girls that I teach get to see a female instructor, and they get to see, the women fighting on TV. And I hope it just means that there's going to be more fighting in the future.
Yeah, same here. It's like such an awesome thing now, because I know I didn't grow up with it either. And the only thing I remember was Billie Jean King, in tennis, and then had a match against Bobby Riggs. And that was like the big thing. And it was like, a woman could actually do that? Wow, that was huge. But that's how old I am. I'm like, ugh. This is a question I ask all my guests on the show, is were you ever told no or kept from doing something that you wanted to do because you were a woman, and how did you handle it?
I mean, I think, of course, all women have been told no, but to be kept from doing something, absolutely not. And I think it does go back to having, the kind of father I had, and even training under the kind of instructor I trained with Guy, that I've had an incredible support group that would never let me hear something like that, or that would never support anyone that would say something like that to me. So I remember actually, when I was in 5th grade, I did a karate tournament and I won, and I came back to school and I was talking to the, PE teachers about it. And I was like, oh yeah, there's a karate tournament and I won first place, and I beat some boys. And one of the PE coach was like, yeah, but like, were the guys like really trying as hard as they could? And I was like, yeah, like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, but I mean, real, like, you think the guys, if they were really trying as hard as they could, like, that you could beat them? And I was like, yeah, I did beat them. They were like, "Oh, but really, were they doing everything they could have?" And so when I went home and I told my dad that, and my dad was like, "Oh, hell no." And so my dad, marched right up to the school and raised hell. And then I don't know, I think the entire athletic department had to go through some sort of like sexism training or something. Um,
Awesome. Wow, I love your dad. That's so
so
awesome.
yeah, and I don't. So again, I think, have I heard things like that? Yes, but at
Wow.
the same
You must
time,
have been like, thanks, Dad. Like he had your
well,
back. Wow.
I mean, no, my dad always had my back. My dad always
Yeah.
had my back, and again, and guys always have my back. And so to have, I think I've been really lucky in that I've had incredibly strong men around me that
Mm.
are not going to tolerate things like that. And so I haven't had to deal with that as much as maybe some others would.
That's so awesome. And what's really significant about that is there's a lot of women who haven't had that. And to hear that a woman having that, and it also is another aspect of success. So you dads out there, this is a huge thing for your daughters to be able to do that, and to stand behind your daughter when she's doing something that is unconventional, and saying, hey, no, this is wrong. Don't diminish my young girl, my daughter, my girl, and second guess her, so she self doubts herself. And because I know, even at my age now, there's times where I've overcome it through my martial arts training. But like if you're having even a conversation with a person, you end up sometimes they might question you on it. And I know I've had this happen to me a couple times, and I'm like, no, that's what that or the other thing is. And I'm not second guessing myself anymore. But early on in my teens or in my college years, I was second guessing myself. And this leads to a lot of, choices that probably could be made that doesn't work out for women. So that's a huge thing that your dad did that for you. That's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a very cool story. I'm glad you shared it. And it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. I actually can't even wait to have you back on after another fight of yours. I can't wait to see what you do. And we're going to make a pact and have you on the show again, because you're a cool chickie and I love seeing what you do. Your last fight too was awesome. I know it's not the outcome you wanted, but you definitely made a statement, and you're going to be remembered for the headbutt. and it's all good. It's all good. And is there any parting words of wisdom that you want to send out there, or maybe remind fans of where they can find you on social media, and or any shout outs to sponsors or anything like that? The floor is yours.
Fans can certainly find me on Instagram. It's Audrey D. Wolfe, and I've got an athlete page on Facebook. You can follow me there, Audrey Wolfe MMA, I think is it. Um, I've got, thank you to my awesome sponsors, Black Box Stocks, CSM Mobile, Versa Climbers, Smart Stop Storage, and KO Reps. And then I train at the best gym at the world, the Guy Messer's Combat Sports Club. If you're ever in Dallas, come check us out. And thank you so much to everyone for the support. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the next one. I promise it'll be a better show.
Well, I definitely look forward to seeing you fight. You're a great fighter, and obviously a great person too. And looking forward to speak with you again sometime soon. And your next fight, whenever it will be, we'll be watching. You got a fan out of me at that headbutt. I was like, I'm a fan. I loved it. I mean, even though it didn't, I was like, damn, I like this girl. Great fighter. So thanks again for being on the show. This was this was Audrey Wolfe, and looking forward to seeing you fight again, and good luck to you. And I hope you feel better, and thanks for spending the hour here too while you weren't feeling well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, wow, that was a great interview with Audrey Wolfe. I am really amazed at, you know, the years of training that she's done, and the character development too within the martial arts. Definitely a great person, and looking forward to seeing her fight again and seeing how she progresses in Invicta in the featherweight division. And, you know, getting those fights with some of the other women, like say Pam Bam Sorensen, or some of the other ones that are going to be on that show in the up and coming months. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in that featherweight division. So if you liked what you heard today and are eager to hear more, remember to subscribe on iTunes, or better yet, you can 10x your energy without destroying your body with my 3-part video series. You can sign up online at evolvewmma.com. And with that too, you'll be put on an email list that you'll get these episodes and updates on future episodes coming up. And you can now see us on YouTube, so you can see me and my guest chit-chatting. And yeah, you could find that at Women's MMA on YouTube. And then we also have a Patreon page, so we are looking for patrons. And yeah, subscribe to it, donate. There's opportunities for sponsors if they'd like to sponsor the show. Would definitely like to have that, because I like to see this grow. I could use some help with it. And then I'm also, you know, I just did a recap with Pam Bam Sorensen of Invicta 31, and I'd like to do another one come for Invicta 32, and probably have maybe another one of the fighters on to chit-chat about that. But I need kind of, what am I going to call it? It needs a name. You know, is it like, you know, Evolve WMMA wrap up, or is it, I don't know, I need a name, like, you know, the fight news or something. I need kind of a thing that I could publish, you know, maybe once a month, or once an event when Invicta comes out, or maybe, you know, once a week, but need a name. So how about a little contest? We'll put it out there for you fans to come up with a name, and whoever comes up with the best name, I will send a t-shirt. Check it out. Nevertheless, she persisted, with an official logo on the back that says Evolve Women's MMA. So how about that? So I think that's all I got. Oh yeah, you can find us on Facebook, where you'll find this contest on Facebook at facebook.com/ILoveWMMA. This is Shelley Devine. Until next time, thanks for listening.